Welcome to the Get Your Act Together podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Reynolds, and I have a wonderful guest for you today. Jen Szpigiel is joining us today from Becoming Iconic. Hi, Jen.
Hi, Kelly. So glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm very excited. So, Jen, tell everyone out there who you are, what you do, what is your company?
So lots of things. There's lots of things to Jen. And I feel like that's something we all share, to be honest with you. We all have these different passions and we're so multifaceted. So first and foremost, I think the most important part is that I'm a mom of 4. So my most treasured title is mom, and really has been the catalyst and the seed, the roots to most of the decisions I've made as an adult woman. I started way back when I was in corporate. I had a marketing career that I absolutely adored and loved. And when I had my first baby, I looked down at her and I fell into the trap and the narrative that most women fall into. This idea that I had to choose. I had to choose motherhood, or I had to choose to continue my corporate career. And it literally, at the time, to be honest with you, felt like a nearly impossible choice, because as much as I loved being a mom and I loved my baby and I did not want to sacrifice anything to be an exceptional mom to her, I also really loved my career and I loved who I was in that role. And I was young. I was so young when I had my first baby. So there was a lot yet to discover and unfold. So this was really, not knowing at the time, was really this spark to me in entrepreneurship, because I did decide to leave my corporate job. I now have 4 kids and I've been working at home ever since. But entrepreneurship, when I finally discovered it, because I was raised by teachers, so entrepreneurship was never a conversation, never something that was introduced to me or an idea or a concept that I'd even contemplated. And so when I found it, I was like, this is the answer. I get to have the best of both worlds. And it's now turned into a mission to help women stop and really to eradicate this sacrificial living that we feel, it's not the truth, but that we feel we are subjected to, that we have to choose one side of us in order to be excellent. And I'm here to be living proof through Becoming Iconic and through my family that we can have it all. And we can do it all really, really well. There does take some skill and practice and learning and growth as a part of that. But I literally want to be this living example, as well as someone who can host and hold and teach other women and entrepreneurs how to do the same.
I love this. I love this message. I came from a corporate Wall Street career before my son was born. But there was always in the back of my head that if I stayed here, I would never see my children.
Right.
I had known a lot of my friends who had done it. They were rushing off to get the bus for the hour-and-a-half ride home so they could maybe pick their kid up and see them for 10 minutes. Right. So I love this message of being able to not only be a good mom, but also be successful in your career.
100%. And that we have this massive capacity. It's our superpower. But the thing is, it's been dimmed, it's been stifled, it's been rejected because of the strength and power that it holds. And if only we gave ourselves more opportunity and permission to see what our capacity is, it would really leave us awe-inspired. I know for my own self, it is. I can't say that it's perfect. I can't say that I don't hit overwhelm. I can't say that there's some days where I'm like, I want to pull my hair out. That's a human experience. But what I can say is I truly, with all conviction and honesty, say that I live a fulfilling life, that I'm doing all the things that I've ever wanted to do. Again, it's never in perfection. It's always for me about this progression forward, hence the name Becoming Iconic. It's this becoming our fullest, most fruitful version of ourselves, the shared purpose that we all have. How many people say, I just want to find my purpose. And I think there's nothing really to find. The purpose is to develop yourself, expand yourself, see your capacity in this lifetime, what you're capable of, what you could do to impact the world and stretch into new and exciting things. It's an adventure. That's our shared purpose. But we want to stifle ourselves and fixate on one thing as though that's the only way we can serve in this life. Be a great mom. And, I won't search for that career, or I won't really dive into goal setting for myself as a woman, or the vice versa, the opposite.
I feel like a lot of my friends who are not entrepreneurs have not kind of jumped the fence, I guess you'd say, they say, well, I wish I could find a job like you did. And I'm like, but I didn't find a job. There was no, like they're looking on a list of things to pick. And I'm like, but I created mine out of nothing. Like this business wasn't here 7 years ago. But it's a very hard mindset shift, I think, to get there, to think, okay, well, these are the jobs that are available. This is what they pay. And that's my choices. Do you see that kind of mindset issue coming up when people are coming to you? Or do you think that they've already kind of blown through that and they're excited about where they're going because they've already come to you?
Right. You know what? That's a great question. And what I find the most is this fear and hesitation for pivoting in our lives. And I do want to also just say this because I think it's an important message. There's a lot of women and men in a corporate career. And I would be so saddened if we ever made anybody feel like that wasn't as good as entrepreneurship. We actually need people working in jobs in corporations to make the world go round. And we need people who are really good at those jobs. So, you know, we say entrepreneurship is for everyone. I do think everybody has the availability to be an entrepreneurship, that everyone could attempt to be an entrepreneur, but not everybody. That wouldn't be fulfilling for everybody. So one of the things we have to be careful of is we don't subject people who choose to work in corporate versus entrepreneurship. We don't have that same battle of what's better than. It's whatever fulfills you. That's the ultimate goal. And if it is a corporate job, amazing. However, to answer your question, there's a lot of people who aren't fulfilled and happy either in entrepreneurship, because I have worked with people who are entrepreneurs and want to go back into the workforce, and how they've navigated that. And also there's a lot of people who are in a job and, you know, it doesn't fulfill them. It's not satisfying. They loathe the Monday morning and want to make a pivot. And there's so much courage and bravery that is required to make a pivot. And I find a lot of people come into my world at that point where they're hungry for change, but are so riddled in fear of what ifs. Like, what if I do this and it doesn't work and I've sacrificed this job? What if I do this and what will people say of me because I've built this big career? I got this degree and my whole life was built around coming to this place, and now I'm going to pivot into something totally different. And what we have to remember is that as human beings, we're always evolving. And when we stifle or stop the evolution process of who we are and developing all of the passions and the desires of our hearts, that's when all of a sudden life gets really daunting. That's when things creep in and a lot of the mundane starts to take place. And I just don't feel we're meant to be here to ever have a day in mundane. And so that is definitely something that I love coaching people through because I've done it. I feel like entrepreneurship is a professional game of pivoting because we're always, adjusting and shifting. So I feel very comfortable with that. But I've made some pretty big pivots in my lifetime. And so I can hold space for what that entails and for the different emotions that come up, but also be an advocate and a living example for those people to say, through this bravery and courage on the other side is something so incredible if you would just give yourself that permission to just try.
I feel like that a lot of times people are like, well, isn't it scary? And I'm like, all the time.
All the time.
All the time.
Yes.
Recording my podcast by myself in my room. Still scary sometimes. So tell me about your story. Tell me about these, how did this all become? How did becoming iconic become iconic? How did it become your business? Where did this go?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I'd built this great career in business mentoring exclusively. And of course, in business mentorship, there's some life mentorship that naturally is going to be a part of that. And in the course of my career, I sort of reached this place, the peak of the mountain that most people would love to get to. It was tens of $1,000s a month in revenue and income. I was traveling the world. My husband ended up leaving his career and being home. We were raising kids together. It was let me backtrack. That wasn't yet. That's on the other side. So I was at this peak. I got ahead of myself. I just want to talk about the good parts. There was some not good parts. So before this, I was at the pinnacle of my career, traveling the world, had these 2 children, and I went through a divorce. So that's the first part. That's the first chapter of becoming iconic. And during that divorce, it was a really interesting thing to navigate because I did have a lot of people who, you know, had looked at my life and then had like an I got you. So I felt like a lot of people actually took that as something to use against me, especially in life mentorship and business mentorship. So I heard things like, well, I don't even know if I want to build a business like you have because I want my marriage to last. I mean, ouch.
Ooh. That's rough.
Yes. I don't know if I want to create a bigger income than my spouse because I'm worried that my marriage won't survive. So things like that were dropped in, these connotations that somehow my experience would be their experience and somehow my experience was attached to my business and my success, which it was not. The only thing,
and almost the implication that you were a bad wife because you had a business.
Right.
Going back to what we were talking about at the beginning, like you could be a good mom or you can have a career.
100%. And I do have to say in full transparency that being successful and having a very healthy income did empower me to make great choices for myself and my children. So that empowered my choice. I wasn't stuck. I wasn't in a relationship that I couldn't leave because of financial reasons or whatever else. So yes, it empowered me, but it wasn't the reason. It wasn't like, oh, I'm good now. Thanks for the time together. This was a long time coming. We were babies when we got married and it was just too young, too fast. That hurt in the meantime. But what started to reveal itself is a ton of women hitting me up in the DMs saying, I'm unhappy in my marriage. I've watched you rebuild your life. I watched you walk through this. Could you support me? And I was actually being inundated with those types of messages. And so I felt unqualified to support women in their marriages only because I didn't have tools, only my own experience. So I went back to school to become a certified life coach. I wanted a certification to have the skills and the ability to hold space and give advice that would honor marriages and at the same time honor the woman. So I am very pro-marriage. I didn't want to be a divorce coach. I wanted to be someone who could support women to hold it all. That was always the underlying theme. And then it led into this massive growth where women were really starting to seek me out because they realized they can have it all. And I was figuring that out. And I had gone through my own big shifts and pivots to bring me here. And so that experience offered a really big base of knowledge and hindsight so that they could maybe miss some of those twists and turns that I don't wish on anybody. And it was 2019, after really sort of seeing the movement, that I started to also realize that there was more to me. So here comes that next evolution. And that was a really interesting journey, to be honest with you, Kelly, because I stifled that a lot. I was like, how could I possibly want more? I mean, this is the dream. I have dream clients. I have a dream business. I had then found my now husband and was living the dream life. He was home. We had 2 more children. Everything was picture perfect. But there was a rumble in my tummy and I just felt like I may be greedy. I said things like that to myself. Like, I must be greedy or selfish. Like, how could I want more? This is everything people are desiring and dream of. And so by pushing that down, I ended up in 2019 hemorrhaging. And when I hemorrhaged, that was an absolute turning point in my life because it didn't end up being anything physically wrong with me. It was a physical manifestation of stifling my creativity, of holding myself back and all the stories that I was telling myself, the very stories that I'm walking my clients through, but I wasn't following my own advice. And then came becoming iconic.
I feel like we tend to not ever listen to our own advice. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the truth.
Right. Mm-hmm. So, all right. So that's a lot. So you've had to go through all of these things and now you're using those experiences to coach clients.
Yeah. And what it did, you know, through really understanding that, hold on, this isn't selfish. As a matter of fact, what's selfish is me playing small and me not honoring those tugs on my heart because I'm making this all about myself. Am I selfish? You hear the I statements and all of that. So I realized, oh my goodness, the selfish part of all of this is me not exploring what this next chapter is. And the next chapter was that I was building a company. I was no longer building a personal brand. I realized that this had turned into something much larger. I saw a lot of gaps in the online space where people were being mentored and then going off and building websites and coming back and being like, I don't like my website. It's awful. I paid all this money, or doing branding and saying, well, I didn't want to, they seemed like to be offended when I gave them feedback. So I just thought, forget it, I'll use it. And a lot of these stories were reoccurring. So I started opening up my team to my clients, and we were building branding and websites and, podcasts, full service podcast management and all these things, because I knew my team would do it really well because they do it for me. And then the agency was birthed. And then last year when I lost my social media, tens of thousands of followers. I mean, can you hear all these stories? Like, of course, you've
been through the wars here.
It's not been an easy journey. It really hasn't. But there all have been such big blessings. And I know that sounds like so cliche to say, but it is the absolute honest to God truth, because every one of those times was a look in the mirror moment to be like, well, what's next? And how do I want this to be? And so losing my social media had me deepen the brand, and out came the magazine. And now I have this global magazine that entrepreneurs are salivating over and can't wait for the next month's issue. And so it's just been a really beautiful progression and development and exploration of self. And I suppose the audacity, not always, but at the end of the decision, the audacity to try things and see and explore what's next.
I love all of this. Not all the terrible things.
No, it's okay. I actually
that came out right.
No, it's
no. I mean, that sounded terrible. No, I mean, like, I love that, like, this iteration. There's just an iteration, and I feel like that is so at the core of being an entrepreneur, because it's not a job. You get hired on a job description, and that's it. That's your job until you're 65, and then entrepreneurship, especially lately, it is this driving force of like, how can I change? How can I iterate? How can I figure out how to keep going? A lot of people this past year have been talking about this so much because COVID was such a crazy time in business. Right. And then 2022 kind of changed everything again. And like you were saying before, a lot of people I've heard a lot of my peers going back to corporate jobs, just saying like, I'm not here for this. Like, I don't want this kind of crazy roller coaster ride that this has become. And I can totally understand that. I think that I can never go back. Like, I'm too spoiled now. Like, I work with my dog and I get to go to the beach, and then I get to work hard when I want, I don't know how I would go back, but trying to iterate, that is the quintessential entrepreneur, what you're doing.
And it is exhausting. A good exhausting.
Oh, yes.
A good exhausting. We're really good at sharing why entrepreneurship is the answer. And it is, for so many freedoms and for the flexibility. But we also have to honor the other side of entrepreneurship that nobody talks about. We glamorize it, and like, you can make all this money and work whenever you want. And those are truths over time. But there's sweat equity that is necessary to build those freedoms. And there's also an incredible amount of sweat equity to keep those freedoms. So holding success, to me, is really where leadership shows up or doesn't show up versus the building. Scaling a business, that there's all sorts of components that can add to that. And there's a lot of exciting things that can really build momentum within a business, but holding it, that's a whole other story. That's one of my favorite things to do in my business, is to work with high level, high achieving entrepreneurs, because they get to these pinnacle levels in their career, like multi 6 figures, a 6-figure month, 7 figures. And then they look and realize, oh my goodness, I've got to do this again and again and again. And to hold this, I mean, to have one 6-figure month and never have it again. Well, sure, that's an incredible thing that you achieved, but I don't think that's the end goal, is to reach that once and then fall back down. It's to reach that goal and set a new standard, a new bar of excellence. And how do we repeat that? And there's a lot of work involved in that. And that's the part we don't share very often.
Yeah. And I think that we think that there's like this goalpost, like we make $1 million in a year, let's say. And then the next year you start at zero again.
Right.
And not only do you have to make that $1 million, if you want to make 2 million, now you got to make the first million again and then make the next million.
Yep.
And it's this constant, okay, the whole world may have changed this week and you have to keep going. And it's like this constant detective story. Yeah. How are we going to figure out how to do this?
Absolutely.
It's not this like, oh, well, you figured out a thing and you're done now. And I think that that's a lot of my friends are like, oh, well, you figured it out now, right? I'm like, I've not figured it out at all.
No, I think we start to better understand what we're really good at. I think we better understand how to express that and articulate that out into the world. Those things we sort of hone and can continue to improve. But you know, what's happening outside of ourselves, culture, world, preferences, trends, those things are constantly changing. And so innovation is a necessity when it comes to entrepreneurship. I'd say innovation is important even in a corporate career. I mean, to just do the same thing day in and day out, that's where that mundane lifestyle comes up. How can you be innovative in whatever role you're in, whether a corporate title or an entrepreneurship journey?
You were coaching your clients and then you started having them come in and be able to use your team as a resource. Is that still how your agency is today? And what kind of services do they provide?
Yeah, so it started that way. It was very behind the scenes where, you know, private clients would realize, I don't have a brand. And so I can mentor that, but there are different brand assets that I cannot produce. I wish I could translate vision into an actual graphic, but this girl, that something stops her there. I mean, there is a full stop. For some reason, computing what's in my mind and actually making it live doesn't work for me. Is I went to school for fashion, and that's why I had to go into fashion marketing, because I couldn't take what I was seeing visually and sketch it onto a piece of paper. It's just not my zone of genius. And so I started offering these beautiful humans who I had created sort of an executive boardroom table of these incredible women who are genius at these things to fill in the gaps of the different parts of my business that were energy leaks, that, you know, I just was like, oh my goodness, you can't do it all at all times. And I think solopreneurship is so overrated. And I think it's a point where, again, and this isn't going to sound pretty, but somebody's got to tell the truth from time to time. It's like women can get back into martyrism and victimhood very easily as a solopreneur. Things like, well, I'm doing it all. And they'll even bring it into their partnerships. If they're in a marriage or a relationship, like, I have to cook and clean, and I'm building a business, and I'm doing my corporate job still, and I've got to walk the dog, and da-da-da-da-da. So it's like we're going back into these cycles of martyrism and victimhood. And that's actually not necessarily what the experience has to be like at all. You can hire a VA for a small amount of investment to relieve yourself of some of the things that you don't like to do, to give yourself more time to do the things only you can do, or to be present in your relationship and make meals if you love to cook. So I think that's the first thing, is like realizing, like, why are you feeling like you have to do all of this on your own? The number one reason people come back to me, what they say is, well, I can't afford it yet. And I don't make enough money yet. I'll tell you the number one thing that moved me from multi-six figures to seven figures. And I had been making healthy multi-six figures for 11 years. It was like a flat line. Now, in entrepreneurship, a flat line is sexy because obviously I could sustain and hold that income. So I know how to do that, but there was a lid. I just couldn't break this like $500,000-$600,000 mark. Like, it was just like, there was a cap. As soon as I thought to myself, I'm done, I'm offloading some of this, I'm delegating, I no longer feel like I want to do all of this on my own. And I made those bigger moves and I made those investments that were so scary. And my business exploded. It was almost like overnight. It was incredible what happened. And it was almost instantaneously, I pumped up to that 7-figure mark. Why? because I wasn't doing all the things. I don't need to be good at all the things. And there's some people who have perspective and insight that I never would have because I'm not great at some of those things. And so, learning that through my own experience and then being able to offer those people that I was hiring to my private clients really started to show benefit. And every single person who worked with my agency, I could see them take a breath. I had one person that came in and she'd spent $20,000 on a website and branding. And I wanted to use the H word, but I don't like using the H word. She didn't like it at all. Okay. There was nothing about it. She wouldn't use it. She didn't share it. And that was $20,000 investment.
That's a lot of money. Yeah.
And that's not the only story. But when she reinvested in branding and a website and was heard and felt seen and felt celebrated and was able to be collaborative in the process, it was the best investment she ever made. And it didn't cost her $20,000 through my agency. And so I was starting to see how this was a really big need in the online space, to see that, okay, Jen has had success. It's proven, it's there. I can see it. I feel it. And I have access to the team behind a 7-figure brand. And this team is so heart-centered and soul-centered that I'm not going to feel like a number or a transaction. I'm going to actually feel like I'm in partnership with people because we're small and tight. I mean, this is an answer to prayer. And so the agency has become something I'm just so proud of. It is growing exponentially, but at the same time, we're keeping tight boundaries around that growth because I always want it to feel like coming into a home and sitting back in a chair and being served and hosted. That's really the goal.
Being able to delegate and get clean air so that you can think is amazing. Mm-hmm. It was the reason in my own business, we got a large client last year, sold their business, and the new people took it in-house. And the last couple of months, we thought, okay, we're not going to do anything for like the first couple of months. We need clean air. Like I watch too much F1 racing these days, clean air. But like just the idea of being able to have space to think and to read things and to learn things. And then you get like excited again. Mm-hmm. You want to do things. So I totally understand why all of the sudden you could break that plateau and you could go, because now you don't have to worry about every little thing. Right. Like, we're operations people. I am. And my brain constantly thinks of all the things that have to get done. Mm-hmm. And I imagine other business owners, moms especially, it's always thinking, your brain is always clogged up with this. So getting some kind of space seems wonderful. Yeah. Just being able to think and be a business person instead of running yourself to death.
Yeah. My best piece of advice for those listening in is to look at all the tasks you're doing in your business, like to actually make a running list, which would astonish you. There's a great way of seeing capacity as well, to celebrate and acknowledge, like, wow, look how much I am doing. Like, we can look at this in a positive way. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm doing all these things. It can actually be, wow, look what I am doing in a day. I'm proud of myself. I acknowledge.
Like an accomplishment.
Yeah. And then from that running list, highlight all the things you could pay under $20 an hour for. What are all those things? And start there. Because I'm certain if you looked at what you're being paid an hour when you're in your zone, doing the service, the offering, the program, selling the product, whatever it is, if you look at how much you're worth, I'm certain you're more than $20 an hour. So anything that's below your pay scale is where you start. And you say, okay, those are the first steps, the first tasks I'm going to offload. And I'm going to find somebody that can host that for me. And there's nothing better than having a team. I mean, to know that you're waking up and there's other people standing behind you wanting to grow this alongside of you. It takes that solopreneurship lonely journey to a whole other level of fun and excitement and collaboration, because it's not just you anymore. You've got human beings behind you supporting you for all the growth.
Oh, I mean, it's a totally different place than sitting in your office by yourself, right. Especially if you come from corporate and you're on this online world. It's super lonely. Mm-hmm. Like, you're in your office by yourself. Maybe it's not even an office, maybe it's a kitchen table, right. And you're trying to figure out how to do all this. Like, having that kind of team, even to bounce ideas off of, because I feel like we second guess ourselves, especially when we're new to this. and we're, getting out over our skis a little bit, and we're scared. And to have someone to talk that through, I mean, that's, like I've done a bunch of stuff, way too much probably, by myself, and having my husband who's come in as like media and marketing and being able to talk that through beyond having the rest of my actual agency to talk things through. I mean, it's a complete difference. I don't know that I could have grown the business anywhere near as big or as well if they hadn't been here.
Right. Right. And you know what? Isn't that beautiful to acknowledge them as well and to give space so that feeling of like it being an actual legacy? I know for myself that has felt really fulfilling, because if you think about legacy, and I used to teach it incorrectly. I have to own this. I used to teach legacy as something that you're leaving behind you. So you're building this business to be able to pass it down to people when you go. And although I still believe in building, like that's what I'm building, a company that, one day one of my kids would be able to take over. And if they don't want to, they could sell. That's really the goal. However, what I've learned recently that I think is so important is that every day gets to be a legacy day. How I live today is legacy. And so why would I wait to enjoy time with my children, enjoy the rewards of my business, enjoy the freedoms that I have created, and wait for that when I'm passing? I mean, I want to enjoy and reap all the rewards of everything I've built alongside of my children, and then of course leave them something as well. So I think that's really like, you're almost touching on that as well, having your husband involved and involving people that you love into your business and to support you is such a beautiful way of building a legacy, something where it's collaborative, it's connective, and we're not doing this alone. Instead, we have these two hearts and heads and minds together, creating something together. And I just think that makes for such a beautiful relationship in the business and outside of the business. My husband's home full time, and he doesn't work in the business like formally. But there's so much to do with 4 kids and our home and just managing me. I mean, bless him. He is so good at managing me and, making sure I'm eating, making sure I have water in front of me. I couldn't do this without him, to be honest with you. And I don't know if I acknowledge that enough. I mean, his support and his willingness to be behind the scenes of everything that we do is so incredible. And I'm so eternally grateful.
Yeah, I mean, beyond the fact that he makes sure that I eat and don't pass out because I forget if I'm in the middle of something, he also makes sure that I sound good every week on this podcast because he's my editor.
Oh, yay. That's so nice.
And also on Fridays, he brings me Prosecco at my desk. We have Bubble Fridays on Friday afternoons because if we've made it through a week, it's a celebration of whatever we've lived through. We've made it through another week, or the good stuff, or the fact that we're still alive. So I will just have a glass of bubbles brought in and put at my desk on Fridays.
Wow, that's husband goals. I might steal that idea. I think that's incredible.
Totally.
That's incredible.
And it's like, I am solely about the enjoying the life. I came from people who, sounds so weird the way I said that. I came from a family who is very much job. No, there's really no entrepreneurs there. It's a very different mindset. And it was very much about work, retire, that kind of thing, right? You work hard, you work hard, you work hard. And for me to have bubbles on a Friday afternoon, like we're trying to enjoy all the time, right? Because so many people get to that place where they're retirement age and then they're too sick or they didn't make it to retirement age and they don't get to finally enjoy anything. So we've really focused over the last couple of years, especially through COVID, on this lifestyle as well. Like we're both home, we're both here. If it's a really sunny day and I don't have any meetings, we will go and paddleboard down the river because you have to enjoy that. Yeah. That's the whole reason we're working so hard all the other times.
Yeah.
In this business.
Yeah. I term that obsessive gratitude. So I teach that often where gratitude.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah. Because gratitude, I mean, we end up making a task out of gratitude. It's like write down 5 things you're grateful for every day. And although that's a great starting point and a great practice to spark gratitude, that's not where gratitude ends. I mean, that's so simplistic and basic. Obsessive gratitude is what you just described. It's like every day seizing the day and actually like wringing out every last drop of that sponge Every night I lay my head on the pillow. I shouldn't say every night because that wouldn't be truth. There's some nights I lay my head on the pillow and know that I could have done better. And there were areas for improvement. But most nights I lay my head on the pillow and I'm so proud of the way the day unfolded. I'm so honored of the conversations I was able to hold with clients. I'm so grateful for my family and all the kids tucked in their beds, or maybe not tucked in, the older ones, but at least in their rooms, safe and sound. They're happy. You know, we had a meal. You actually think of the abundance of blessings around us. And if we only paused to give more gratitude, that's what manifestation is. That's when more can be welcomed in. But if we are constantly waiting for that thing in order to feel those feelings, we're going to be so disappointed. And I know when I hit 7 figures, that was my biggest learning curve, is like nothing changed.
Right? Nothing changes. I hit 100,000 for the first time.
Yay!
And there was no party. No one showed up. Right? And I was like, but this is supposed to be more fun.
Yeah.
Like I expected like balloons and some kind of like jazz band to come through my office and like, you know what I mean? And nothing happened. When you hit 200,000, like whatever the thing is, it doesn't matter. Like you have to enjoy it for yourself. And I remember hitting a really big goal and my coach at the time was like, I am telling you to sit still for 5 minutes and just appreciate it, because you are the one who has to make the party and the big deal about it.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. When we say nothing's changed, I don't want to be a downer for those people who are looking forward to something either, because things do change. I mean, what happens
you can pay your
expansion. So your expansion as a woman, as a human, that's the shift and change. You start to realize what's possible, something that felt so far off, like your first 6-figure year. Like you remember when you're building that and you're thinking, oh my gosh, if I could only hit, 8 to 10 figure, or 8 to 10,000 every single month. That's my, but you're doing 2,000 and it feels like this stretch. And then
never can happen. It's so hard to think that.
Yeah. Yes. Right. And then you get there and all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, that wasn't as horrible of a journey as I thought it was going to be, or it wasn't as far as I thought it was going to be. So, I mean, being able to be grateful for the $100,000 year prepares you to be grateful for the $1 million year. And if 100,000, you go, well, that's nothing. I want it to be 500, then how can you possibly be entrusted with 500 if all of a sudden 100 is not enough? It's just not how it works. And it's a shift of mindset that changes everything moving forward. But too many people get stuck in attaching themselves to this goal and this end in mind and getting there and thinking that's when everything's going to happen for them. Peace, love, joy, vacation, just the satisfaction they're craving in their lives. And they're giving all of their power over to this thing outside of themselves. And then when they reach it, it's this, you wake up the same person the next morning, versus the progression of enjoying the journey and enjoying today and being so grateful that you have the energy, the health, the vibrancy to build towards that goal. And you're still anticipating it, but you're grateful for what today holds to support yourself to move towards it.
Yeah. I mean, and that I think has changed so many things in my business, being able to celebrate all the time.
Yeah.
Or being able to check out and enjoy an afternoon. My husband and I, because we're home, we do lunch dates because we don't have to get a babysitter. It's not a whole thing. My son's at school. And like those little things, like just being able to go to brunch, like the little things there, I think it gives you so much more space in your mind to be able to deal with all the other things. Yeah. Like you come home and you're like, well, I had a great brunch. Like I can deal with whatever comes my way today. Instead of saying, well, I'll have brunch when I hit, $500,000.
Yeah.
Like, no, go eat the eggs. Yeah. Have the bubbles.
I think that should be the name of the podcast. Eat the eggs and drink the bubbles. I mean, that's the perfect way of putting it. We're delaying joy all the time. It's sort of, if you think back of like when you were a child, and at least I'll talk about my family, my mom saying like, oh, we only use those plates for company, or we only drink out of the crystal glasses when someone's over. And I remember like just being so curious around that, even at a young age, like, I don't get it. Why wouldn't you want to drink out of your crystal glasses? Like it didn't make sense to me, but I also couldn't sift through it and find my own opinion around that. And it took a mentor. It was the most hilarious thing, but it stuck with me and it changed my life. She said, I'm drinking out of my crystal glasses because if I die, that new woman that comes into my husband's life, she is not going to enjoy my crystal more than I did. And she had such a great sense of humor. But at the same time, there's a really potent message in that of like, if you're not going to enjoy the beauty of your life, if you're not going to enjoy the beautiful things that you've already acquired, who will or when? It's like now or never. And I feel like so often we just delay those things. We delay joy. We delay experience. We delay love. We delay celebration because it's like this always looking for that next thing, the shiny thing in front of us, instead of realizing the shiny thing is this moment right now.
I love this. I love this whole message. I think that more people need to think like this instead of just putting it all off. Mm-hmm. I think mostly because it gets you through the day. Like all those, we all know them. We all love them. They're the people that complain about everything. It's not, the sky isn't blue enough. It's everything is bad all the time. And I feel like if some people really kind of enjoyed themselves more and let go of that, they wouldn't be so cranky all the time, I guess. But you know what I mean? Like, we have friends like that. They're just, it always is a terrible day. And I can't imagine living in that. And I'm sure I have. I know when I was on Wall Street, I was miserable. I was crying like on Saturday afternoon, forget Sunday.
Wow.
Before it's about Monday. I hated it. And I can't imagine being like that anymore.
And see, those are the people that need to hear that they're not a tree. I mean, you are not stuck. Move.
Yeah.
You're not a tree. And so you are not rooted in your current circumstance. You are not rooted into your current relationships. You're not rooted into your current career or job or entrepreneurship journey. We are not rooted and grounded into any of those things. The roots, the groundedness needs to come into who we are, and developing that and being open to explore and have adventure and have fun and just have a level of curiosity amongst everything we do to realize that we're never stuck, and being stuck is a choice. Not an easy piece of advice to hear, especially for people who are miserable or stuck into the victim mentality. It's not easy to hear, hey, you could be a victor. You could overcome this. You could make a different decision. A victim, it's not easy to hear that because I've been in the victim mentality. It's not easy to hear that, but it's the most beautiful advice we could give in a gentle, loving, compassionate, empathetic way, because a lot of people just forget. They forget that they are not their circumstances. It's not this first choice that matters. It's the second one, because the first choice, we could make the wrong choice. We could maybe, make a quote unquote mistake. It's the second choice that matters the most, because that was truly a choice. You either did it again, you chose to continue, you chose to stay, you chose to make that same mistake. Well, I guess we can no longer call it a mistake. We can call that a choice, a pattern, a loop. And that self-recognition and self-responsibility isn't easy, but it is so worth it.
Yeah. And especially when you feel like you don't have any options, or you can't see that there are any other options.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. I mean, when someone I was coaching with asked me, like, what did you do when you left corporate? And I was like, I painted furniture and I waitressed. And she was like, you were at Lehman Brothers. And I was like, yeah, I needed to get out and I needed to think. But I also was just so excited that there was an option, but I didn't know of all the options. I didn't know about this online world. I didn't know about any of it. Right. So I was so excited there were any options, but it's hard when you don't know that there's anything out there.
Right.
Jen, it has been a fantastic conversation with you today. Can you tell all the people where they can find you and how to work with you?
Well, thank you, Kelly. I really appreciate it too. And I appreciate the fact that you have been such a beautiful piece of evidence to obsessive gratitude. I think that is something really special. And I want to applaud you because your community is really blessed to have that as an example to see through. Yeah, really. I mean that. I do a lot of podcast interviews and speaking opportunities, and it's rare that you find someone who gets it to that level, you know, and I just, I want to applaud you and honor you.
Oh.
So thank you. Thank you for having me. Becoming Iconic is really easy to find. It's Becoming Iconic on the social media platforms. The website is becomingiconic.co, so .co. If you're interested in reading the magazine, the free digital copy is on the website. It's also linked in my bio on Instagram. It is, think of it like Forbes meets Vogue. It is literally the most delicious, beautiful magazine I feel is in the marketplace, because it serves both the business side, so giving business tactical advice, but also lifestyle and inspiration and beauty and all the things we love. So that's available for free. There is the Becoming Iconic podcast. It's a top podcast across all platforms for life and business. So that's always a nice way to get to know me a little bit more, or just reap the rewards of all of the experience that I've been through. And I'm always in my DMs. I think that's a really important message for people listening in. If you do want to connect, I think sometimes we hesitate or wonder, is that really her? Is she the one answering? Can I get in there and have a conversation? 100% you can. That's a piece of integrity for me, that I connect and continue to connect with people. So if you do want to reach out, know that that will be for my eyes and for my heart. And I would love to hear from anybody who wants to have a conversation or connect further.
That's wonderful. Yeah, you have to go check out Jen's social and her magazine. It is beautiful. It looks like it's been curated by Vogue. It's gorgeous.
Thank you. It's my passion. I love it. It's just been such a beautiful thing to develop. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
It's beautiful. So we will link all of this in the show notes as well, so you can find Jen easily. And Jen, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Kelly.
And I will see everyone else next week. Thank you so much for joining me this week. If you have an agency or want to create one, come join my Facebook community, Get Your Agency Together, where we talk all the things growing and scaling your agency. For show notes and more info on all the things, head over to reynoldsobm.com. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook at ReynoldsOBM. And finally, if you enjoy this podcast, I would love for you to give us a review on iTunes.
And most people say Jen from Becoming Iconic because that last name can be such a trip. So, but you did say it perfectly.
Or is like balance, whatever you want to call.